knows you're, yeah, you're representing the aluminium industry, so I guess you're allowed to have.
Okay, so Sonia is now representing the aluminium industry.
Oui, oui, ça va. Oui. Oui. Okay.
That's much more fun, Sonia, like this.
Yeah. I feel a bit like a teacher, like looking at. Et donc je regarde là-bas.
But I've never done an open studio like this, huh? With people walking by, with.
Ouais, okay.
Well, never with cameras. I mean, we had the radio booth here.
Okay.
But then you always wear your headphones and you're isolated from the sounds behind you.
Here you can easily be distracted. Huh? You see someone walking by who you know, and you miss the next question.
You would like to know. It's good that we're. No, you're looking that way. Yeah.
I'm looking at everyone who's coming there.
Several cameras, so it's all going to look like you're looking into the camera, I guess. Okay, circular economy.
You need a sound check, or everything is okay? It's okay. He's listening already.
Okay.
Yesterday I was still in Riga, informal council. I mean, it is still active and hectic, but we had a good joint session between the environment and energy ministers for the first time the Latvians organized, and it was biodiversity and renewable energy. Is it a problematic or mutually reinforcing? And it was. Again, it was an amazing exercise in common sense and recognition that it has to work together.
less fancy when there are bottles around. Yeah. It's rainwater that we're drinking. It's blocked.
Hello and welcome to viEUws. We're coming to you live from the European Parliament, and we're here to discuss the circular economy, and more particularly, how can Europe capitalize on the circular economy? So the background to this live debate, we had a circular economy package from the European Commission last summer. That was subsequently withdrawn by the new Commission, which took over in the autumn. And now we're waiting this year for fresh proposals, which the Commission has said will be more ambitious and broader than its previous package, which focused largely on waste. So to discuss today, we have three speakers for you. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
First of all, Mr. Karl Falkenberg, Director General for Environment at the European Commission. So here to tell us, I hope, on what we can expect. Secondly, Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, a Dutch Liberal MEP with the ALDE Group here at the European Parliament. He was rapporteur on the original resource efficiency roadmap and is also rapporteur on a new circular economy initiative being penned by the European Parliament at the moment. And finally, Andy Doran, who's here representing the European Aluminium Association, and he's also Sustainability and Recycling Development Senior Manager at Novelis, which is a large American industrial aluminium company, a leader in rolled aluminium, so cans, buildings, cars, for all of these applications.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of questions already. We've had a debate on Twitter prior to meeting here live. I'm going to try and incorporate as many of those as possible into our discussion. Obviously, I have questions of my own, being a journalist, but I think those largely converge, so we shouldn't have a problem. And we'll try and take some more questions, if we can, that are coming in during the debate as well. So to start, I think, Karl, the first question has to be to you. We are expecting an initial roadmap from the Commission on what could be in this new package this month, in April. Can you give us an idea of the state of play?
Work is well underway. The Commission continues to very strongly feel that circular economy is essential. We have very broad support throughout the Commission services to look into the different angles of circular economy. One of the points we are particularly focusing on is to see to what extent we can improve all of the circular economy so that when we look at the waste phase, we have better chances of effectively maintaining materials, substances within the circular loop. And on procedure, we have originally said that we would table a new proposal by the end of the year. We're now working towards something that should be available in the fall already, so more rapidly than was originally expected. The process will include a very wide stakeholder consultation that we're beginning to plan before the summer break, so that effectively we would be able to table a new proposal, more comprehensive and more ambitious when everyone comes back from a summer break. And I can only say that in that regard, everyone is working very actively on moving forward. You can obviously not prejudge what are the specific outcomes because we are looking at those. We're looking at a number of options. But what is clearly emerging is that there remains a lot of support. There is even growing support for the necessity to move in the direction of circular economy. The ways in which we can do this most appropriately, I think, will be one of the issues that we will debate. And then we will have to see to what extent legislation or to what extent market-based instruments, to what extent awareness-raising campaigns would be supporting the effective movement in that direction best.
Can we still expect something this month in April, an initial paper, or?
I cannot now pronounce whether this will still be April or whether this will be shortly afterwards. But we're going into meetings at Commission level in the coming week, and we will then see to what extent we have a basis that could be used also for the wider stakeholder consultation that I have referred to.
Okay, so something will come out before the summer that will be the basis for the consultation. Okay.
Well, the consultation will be before summer, so what goes into this will be coming up within the very next weeks.
Okay. Gerben Jan, perhaps remind us why this is urgent, why this is necessary, and why the Parliament reacted as strongly as it did to the original proposal being withdrawn.
Yes, thank you, Sonia, for that question, because I think it's extremely important to realize ourselves how important it is that we make that transition towards a circular economy. And that has to do with a few elements. One is population growth. We have 7 billion people on our planet now. That will grow to 9 billion in the coming decades. We will need 70% more food production in order to feed all those people. The amount of people with a middle income, so with the highest consumption, will double in the coming 10 years to 3 billion people. And that all with roughly 60% of ecosystems degraded at the moment. So there is a huge problem with resource availability. And Europe is one of the most vulnerable continents in the world. We have only a very small portion of the total resources we get from our own continent. So we are extremely vulnerable and dependent on other parts of the world. Furthermore, we are looking for jobs and growth in Europe. And if I look at the documents from the Commission itself, and I see that European businesses can save up to 600 billion euros annually when we create a circular economy. We can create hundreds of thousands of jobs, additional jobs, and we can boost our GDP with up to 3.9%. These are figures that you hardly find in any other field. So I think we would be stupid not to speed up with the transition towards a circular economy.
And why do you think it is? Because the way you talk reminds me of energy security. You're talking about resource security effectively is also a big issue. Why is it that we talk so much about energy security and resource security, has thus far received relatively little attention, do you think?
Well, that is one of the mysteries. I have the feeling that, in boardrooms of companies, they are discussing this because it's a crucial element for their companies. Companies are very vulnerable to not only the scarcity of materials, but also the volatility of prices. That might even be a bigger problem for many companies. But I think the main problem is that most people still consider resource efficiency, resource use as an environmental issue. But it's not. It's a geopolitical issue. It should be part of our external policy. And it is an economic issue. I gave the figures already. I mean, it has so strong economic reasoning behind it that you almost get the environmental benefits for free. So again, we would be really stupid not to move forward with this.
Okay, Andy, you are here representing business. Why, or can you tell us how, in your opinion, does resource efficiency, recycling, etc., bring you extra competitive edge?
I think, just like we were just saying here, really, you can look at it in a number of ways. You can look at it and saying, right, we'll do something that's good for the environment, and maybe that'll make us some money. Or you can look at it and say, actually, for all the reasons that we said about scarcity, price volatility, there's actually a corporate business direction that makes a lot of industries decide that being more resource efficient, buying into and developing, circular business models is actually the way ahead. So, I guess in this debate, in terms of the aluminium sector, we feel that we've got a good track record. It's a material that's once it's extracted, then there is the need for some extraction because it's a growing market still within Europe and globally. So once you've got that linear material, it's permanently available. It's one of these wonderful things they say metal recycles forever. That's if we can get the systems and the infrastructure to collect all that material back. So the opportunity is there. If you look at my own company, we very clearly set out a business that is focused about making products from scrap. Yeah, and not just saying we'll do it from 5% or 10%, but actually 80% of everything that we put into the market in 2020, whether that's going into an automotive application, a packaging application, electronics, all these markets will be made from essentially circular supplies, recycled supplies. So, for us in Europe, we want to see the political conditions, the legislation conditions, and a bit I'd like to talk about a little bit today, the communication and the way that consumers interact to help that grow. For the European wider industry, there's huge opportunity, and my own company, Develis, isn't just on its own doing this. The industry employs, we think, around nearly 6,000 people in recycling alone, and just a subset of the numbers you were saying. The opportunity, the revenue is something like €9 billion, and that's just in the recycling side of our business, and that can grow if the conditions are right. A lot of businesses there on the front foot. We do need the regulatory support to make sure that everyone gets there for the wider environmental arena.
What would you say then what's the most important thing that you need from policymakers right now in this new package? And I think of one example, as you say, is using scrap aluminium makes a lot of sense. A lot of that is exported at the moment, so effectively leaking a resource. What can we do? It comes down to the question many people have asked of how can we create an even stronger market for recycled material here in Europe?
Yeah, we estimate just for the aluminium market, it's something like 750,000 tons of available aluminium that's consumed in the market is exported outside of the market. And it's not just the physical resource that's leaving, it's energy. Yeah? And it's energy that probably, if it's been created within the market, has an emissions trading cost to it, so a carbon cost to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, having an underpinning market price for carbon is a good thing. We've talked about issues like certification, trying to ensure that there are global or interregional playing fields that are level, so that we have environmentally sound management of scrap. And I think that would help as a backstop. There are other wider policies perhaps that could help support the growth of more businesses to invest in Europe to take that material. So it's a direction that's we're moving in anyway, but things that would help us, like longer term vision on underpinning targets, costs on taxation costs on whether it's carbon, whether it's landfill, these sorts of things, give industry that trajectory to know that actually investment is going to be underpinned. That volatility has disappeared. That risk is gone.
Gerben-Jan, what, I guess following on from that, what for you is the most important element of this new proposal?
Well, there are several elements, and we must realize that we do have the communication for circular economy. What the Commission has withdrawn was just the waste package. That is, of course, just part of the circle of the circular economy, but the rest would have been dealt with later on. But now we're waiting for the complete circle to come up with. A few things are still extremely important that I expect from the Commission. First of all, I really expect them to continue coming with binding waste targets. I also would like to work on what I called in my report a Schengen area for waste. It should be much easier for companies to transport waste across borders, because you need an economy of scale quite often for recycling. And now it's so incredibly difficult to get your end-of-life product across the border to have a cheaper way of recycling. We have to tackle food waste. We're still throwing away 1/3 of the food that we produce, which is enormous. And I want a financial and fiscal instrument to create a much stronger market for secondary materials. It's one of the reasons why scrap is leaving Europe, because it's much cheaper to work on it outside Europe, in Turkey or in China, than within Europe. So I'm a strong supporter of working on the tax shift from labor. Labor is far too expensive. 25 million people unemployed in the EU. To a tax on resources. So primary resources might become more expensive, secondary materials can become less expensive. And that will create a much stronger market for the circular economy. And I would like to extend the scope of the Eco-Design Directive. It's only concentrating on energy now. It should focus also on materials used, on repairability, reusability, recyclability. In the design phase is one of the crucial phases for the total lifespan of not only the product but also the materials within it. So that in a nutshell are a few elements that I expect from the Commission.
Well, I think we can delve into each of those, but perhaps first I'll put to Carl the question that many people have asked, which is, we've heard that the new package will be more ambitious. What does that mean? Can you tell us what more ambitious means?
I can't tell you in detail because we're still in the making of this package, but all of the different elements that both Andy and Gerben-Jan have mentioned are in the discussion around this, the definition of a more comprehensive, more ambitious package. I think if I start with industry, what I hear there is two elements that I think are key. One is predictability, because you want to make investments, you want to seize opportunities, but you need a framework that provides sometimes rather expensive investments, the necessary time frame, time perspective to actually amortize the investment. The second element is access to waste. You can very effectively recycle aluminium packages, aluminium waste in other forms, provided you have access to that material. Which means to me that a key element is going to continue to have to be separate collection systems, but also, Gerben-Jan, you mentioned it, eco-design. If you want to be able to recycle and to reuse the recyclates for new products, you need to know what pollutants, what other substances are in the waste that you collect out of which you are going to produce your new materials. So thinking in terms of what are the chemical substances, what are toxic substances that do appear every now and then. Can we replace them? How can we look at this? I think all of this is absolutely fundamental. It also means that the competition between the different solutions to handling waste, from the worst landfill through energy recovery to material recovery, need to be positioned in the market so that there is a drive in the market to the better, the higher levels of use of waste. So there must be a system by which you are being penalized if you throw material into a landfill, because that's the worst that could happen to us. There should be then, at least there should be energy recovery, but there should be the most encouragement should be there to actually reuse the aluminium and produce new products again. That's the cycle, that's the circular economy, that's what we need to go to. And I think the whole element, we are beginning to understand much, much better that all of these incentives have to come right. Partly they can probably be based on legislative proposals. Partly, I think it may be tax. You mentioned tax, Gerben. Yeah. I think if we get the prices better for these different systems, that would be important. And I also think that making sure that in a market for products that is completely open and is considered to be one of the big assets of the European Union. 500 million consumers, one single market. We need to move there for recyclates, for those materials, because if we continue to work within national boundaries when products become waste, then obviously we're not using the size opportunities that are there. So I think we need to make sure that we have this open space also for these secondary raw materials.
And maybe taking one or two of those specifically, so when collection and sorting systems, what concretely do you see you can do? I know the metals industry, they've called for a new definition looking at material recovered rather than material collected for recycling. Is that something that could be part of the new?
We have a lot in place already, and I think we need to address that we're not just producing legislation, but that it is properly implemented. We have legislation in Europe that obliges member states to separately collect the major waste streams. Metals are among them, but plastics, paper, organic waste, and glass need to be separately collected. Not the reality in most of our member states, and that obligation starts in 2015, now. It would be very difficult to explain to any European citizen that we have an obligation to separately collect, but until 2020, 25, 2030, what we separately collect can still disappear in the same landfill. Why would we make the effort of separately collecting? Industry would not allow this. If it's separately collected, these waste streams begin to have market value. You can get in the industry 500 euros per ton of separately collected PVC. Aluminium, you're paying a price for separately collected waste streams. So we need to implement those streams, and we need to make sure that the municipal systems, the regional, the local, the national systems are there, are open, and that this is effectively happening.
But can we expect anything of a change in the definition of what counts as recycled?
We will have to define. We will need to look at the concept of end of waste. We have tested it in a number of areas. We've tested it in the metal area, and the market has basically ignored our criterion because it's organized differently and apparently reasonably well. So we need to learn from there. In the plastic area, people are very clearly demanding a criterion. From when is plastic waste considered to be no longer waste, no longer subject to burdensome waste legislation, but treated as a secondary material, a secondary raw material. So end of waste, the definition of when have waste sufficiently be separated to be considered a new resource. That's, I think, going to be one of the key moments that could introduce a change in how we behave.
Well, I mean, I find that encouraging. I mean, one of the areas that we've, as Sonia said, we're interested in is effectively uncovering real recycling. And I appreciate this can become a political issue because at the moment we tend not consistently at all across Europe to measure, which is one thing. And, okay, we're probably focusing on just packaging here, so I always excuse myself if we focus on quite a small part of the problem, but unfortunately it is the bit that resonates with the 500 million consumers or citizens in Europe. So we measure inconsistently, and we measure largely what gets collected, not actually what gets subsequently sorted to some extent. And it's encouraging to hear you saying we're still persisting with separate collection. But separate collection is such a variable quality of material across many member states that has almost no currency as far as I'm concerned. We really would need to see in each country what a system delivers, and as consumers from all of those markets, we get a good idea as industry. So we'd like to see that it's actually almost factory ready. It's the stuff that, from my industry's perspective, we're ready to put into a remelt, to recycle, put it back into that productive loop. That might mean that we don't have such high recycling levels as we think we have. But the point I would make on that is we're kidding ourselves today, and we're certainly kidding ourselves in 2020, 2025, if the consumer finds out that actually as you say, some of this isn't ending up where it should end up. Targets do underpin the movement of industry, but also they're a totem for the consumer. So they've got to be meaningful targets so that the consumer thinks that actually participating, putting a can in a system, putting a plastic bottle in a system, whatever it is a meaningful act, rather than actually 10% of that might end up somewhere different.
Well, I'm very glad that Andy is mentioning the consumer, the European citizens, because some people believe that this is just something between industry and legislators, but we should also capitalize on the willingness of ordinary European citizens to sort, collect, etc., their waste. And I think that local, regional, but also national authorities, that they should be much more aware of the willingness of their own people. I see it in my own hometown, The Hague in the Netherlands, where people ask me, why is there no separate collection of plastic waste, for instance? And it's unbelievable that it seems like we at European level, we want to move forward, and on the lowest level, our own citizens, they want to move forward, and in between it somehow stalls.
Yeah. It does require organization. Is part of the answer. It means having systems in place to separately collect. It means that municipalities have to no longer just collect one bin, but may have to be collecting several bins. There are great examples. I have recently visited Milano to see an over million cities actually organizing separate food collection systems, because the food waste, which is over the top and which we should reduce altogether, but the food waste that we do produce still can become a very good energy source, and Milano has understood that and has organized it. And has organized it without increasing actually the cost of collecting the system, because the separately collected food goes into an anaerobic digester and produces energy, and actually is beginning to pay for the effort,
but
creating
yes.
jobs, creating additional activity.
But here, small pushes on fiscal and financial issues can really make things moving. I spoke to companies who are willing to pay a city for their organic waste, but at the moment still cities are paying companies to collect the waste. And I think this turning around, this business model being created now on waste should move much quicker than we're doing. And it's not industry that is slowing down, it's governments that are somehow not adapting rapidly enough here.
Well, what can the EU do specifically when it comes to issues like taxes? It's not an easy area for the EU to act on that. And is there a way of driving more, we're getting into the realm of innovation, more cooperation between different sectors, industrial sectors, between businesses and municipalities? One of the goals of Europe, growth, jobs and innovation, it sounds to me like that's part of the waste management and circular economy story as well.
Oh, well, absolutely. I totally agree with that. One thing is Europe can help getting people into contact with each other. And I think there the Committee of the Regions can play a very important role, sharing best practices between cities with companies that are willing to participate. So that's a very important one. But also using European funds for the infrastructure that is so badly needed. And also the innovation policy. We still need much more innovation to still develop further methods for recycling, for design, etc., etc. And I'm very happy that in the new Horizon 2020 program, there's much more money available for this. But it has to be used, and we have to be much more aware of the urgency and the importance.
Yeah. For me, picking up on your point there, exactly. If we're going to use structural funds of some sort, that's probably not the right term. We have 20 years of experience of what's good in terms of collection and sorting technologies. We have a very long tail of probably quite low performers. We need to make sure that actually we allow these people almost to leapfrog Yeah, give them that connection, give them that sharing of information, and also only give them funding if they're going to do something that's reasonably well, tested, tried, and replicable in their circumstances. I think, industry, absolutely. Innovation, it doesn't happen on your own. So cooperation and collaboration is very much part of that. I think you'll see, and I'm seeing from our customer base and actually in our whole industry, there's a lot more people talking to each other that probably wouldn't have talked to each other a few years ago. There are sort of structural, competitive IP, intellectual property issues that I honestly couldn't tell you how the EU could help us with those, but they are things that you need to walk around. So, having funded platforms around, I've seen in the Horizon 2020 things around, green buildings, lightweight vehicles or low emission vehicles, those sorts of platforms for our sector help us have that sort of collaboration to take things forward.
Yeah. Okay, so that's on the... Do you want to come back?
All of these debates, to me, show that what we need to do is we need, through communication, turn what is for the moment seen as a weakness, a very diverse situation in Europe. We still have member states, a majority of member states, where the majority of their municipal waste disappears in landfills. We have, however, front runners who have developed the models that basically lead to no untreated waste disappearing in landfill any longer. We have member states, 4 or 5 member states, where they're basically at zero for untreated waste. Therefore, what now is seen as a problem, we have a difficulty in regulating because we have laggards. We should see as an opportunity because we have the models within Europe that have been tested and that work. We have the governance structures, we know how to organize it, we have the technology very largely. In this area, Europe is at the leading end of technology. And if we can roll this out, others will benefit. Estonia is a perfect example where from 95% municipal waste in landfill, they are basically within less than 7 years, they have gone to zero.
Yeah, but what's the main...
It can be done if we help. I think structural funds should be there. And we're making it very clear for the moment, together with our colleagues in the respective Directorate General, that money for an energy recovery system or for a sorting plant or for a recycling operation will come within the context of a waste management plan, a national waste management plan. Identify what is the expected amount of waste that you think you're going to generate, how do you want to treat with these, what capabilities do you have, where are shortcomings. We don't want to double finance. We don't want to go into overcapacity. We need to have this. It does require a little bit of organizational effort, but I'm aware that it is happening in almost all member states. So I think we will have a very solid basis on which to take this forward.
I do agree what Carl is saying, but then you can have different conclusions afterwards. And that's especially on the big differences between member states. What I hear from rumors within the Commission now is that because of the big differences, they want to step down from the idea of setting European targets for the future. And I think that is a very dangerous path to walk. I think that Andy had a very important thing to say about leapfrogging. I think that those countries who are far behind and who are still landfilling close to 100% of their municipal waste, they can leapfrog. What we should avoid is that they make the same mistakes as some of the front runners by creating too much incineration capacity, for instance. Waste to energy is a wonderful thing, but if you burn almost everything, you throw away a lot of valuable resources, and the only thing you get is energy. So in the waste hierarchy, landfilling is the worst option, but the second worst is incineration. So we really have to be careful there. And quite often incineration is much more expensive to organize than sorting and recycling itself. So you can save a lot of money by not repeating that mistake that has been made in a few front-running countries.
Yeah, I'll come back then after. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, well, I was just going to say there's not very much too circular about energy from waste. I mean, we like to, we should protect the technical, nutrients that we've got, the materials that are out there. So whether it's metals or glass or plastic, even these sorts of materials have opportunities for continued reuse to some degree. The biological side of things, absolutely, we should be minimising food waste. We should be doing everything else. I mean, we can recover metals post energy from waste, but that's very much from the difficult to treat materials that the industry has, so very thin, complex materials that perhaps we can't technically yet separate. But it's not the strategy that I think a lot of the metals industry will be looking at. We'll be looking very much for, as we said, looking at targets that will stretch and underpin the future of the industry. Sorry.
So we're getting close to the end of time, so I'm conscious of that. There are the 2 points that both of you raised. One I'd like to put to you, Carl. One is indeed incineration. What are we going to do about incineration? Somebody asked, are we going to ban it as part of our waste to energy communication? And I'm thinking too, we've got a communication coming on waste to energy. Have we got something specific coming on waste prevention and reuse? And the second question then on targets, indeed, which you mentioned at the very start. We've heard from the Commission the overall economy-wide 30% target is off the table. What kind of targets, binding targets, are we looking at now?
I cannot tell you exactly what kind of targets we will be looking at, but one or two things that I picked up here. We need to have realistic targets, and therefore measuring the success of our recycling efforts in a credible way is very, very important. We should not fool ourselves with large numbers of recycling effort when either the numbers are plainly wrong because they include pre-sorting materials, or because we are effectively downcycling. We need, for a real circular economy, we need to get into high-quality recyclates, and perhaps we need to also all understand that it's more important to get to these high-quality recyclates than to get simply to a big number. If the big number means that we're just producing park benches from all of the plastic waste that we collect, European parks are going to be filled very, very rapidly, and no one will see the benefits, the real benefits of it. So we need to have an intelligent approach to these different solutions, and I think that's what we're trying to come up with, to identify what are the main directions that we want to go. Incineration, the very specific question of energy recovery. Over the last 3 years, 4 years of my discussion with industry, with member states, with everyone concerned, I have never heard anyone saying that 100% of our waste is likely to be recycled, materially recycled, in any foreseeable time frame. There will be a mixed fraction of waste that we produce that we will not be able to separately collect and treat afterwards, and therefore it makes an awful lot of sense, rather than to putting that into landfills where it's going to begin to spoil the environment and to be wasted altogether, to at least recover the energy content of that. And that's what we're trying to say also within the Energy Union context. We have here a source for energy, but it needs to be capped. We don't want to go into overcapacity, but we know that there is a sizable amount of what we produce which we probably can best use for energy recovery. In the same way in which, when we talk about no more landfilling, we need to understand that there are probably hazardous forms of waste for which we have today no other technological solution but to maintain them in a safe landfill. We need to widen the approach also beyond just municipal waste, look at the massive industrial waste that we perform. And there again, there will be things that will have to be landfilled, there will be things that we can energy recover, and hopefully the majority of all of this will materially be recovered and stay in the loop.
Well, the first remarks from Carl in this long answer on setting realistic targets, and we need high quality recycling and not downgrading. There I have the feeling that the Commission is already watering down its more ambitious proposal, because I think we need both. We have to realize ourselves, first, where I started with, the enormous sense of urgency, geopolitically and economically, to move towards this circular economy. That means that we have to be extremely ambitious. Of course, we have to be realistic, but calling higher targets dangerous because they might not be realistic is not the right approach. We have to realize ourselves that recycling industry is a high-tech business. It is not the Tony Soprano who is waste management consultant anymore and trying to get rid of waste and making a buck. No, it is high-tech industry. And let's use the Juncker Investment Fund. Let's use other funds that we have in order to give it a real boost. And then we can make high numbers also realistic. So I hope that the Commission will stay as ambitious as we would like them to be in Parliament.
Yeah. The European Aluminium Association has called for ambitious but more realistic and real targets. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
I think coming back to the original proposals, the targets there were challenging if we're looking at getting real measurement. So I flip it the other way around. We need to know what the real measurement actually means before we can say, yeah, absolutely that number. But I think the industry's already got a voluntary initiative of its own to and it's promoting campaigns like Every Can Counts to collect cans across all of our about 10 different countries there. So we're looking at in the 70 plus market definitely. I don't think you'll find the challenge from the aluminium industry per se or the metals industry per se is as tough as it's going to be from some of the other sectors, because there's much more challenges there. We've got as I said before, we've got a material, actually 75% of all the aluminium that's ever made is still circulating. Yeah. So it's the perfect material. So I think we're up for that challenge. It's a part of that package, but achievable and realistic. You can debate that all day as to what that actually means.
Yeah. We'll wrap up in a moment. I've got a question to each of you, but first the prevention question. Are you working on that separately?
Yes, we will look at how we can improve waste prevention. Waste avoidance is obviously the best we can do. We will look at all the different elements. We will look at repairability, which is one way of avoiding waste. We will look at durability as a criterion for eco-design to make sure that our products are designed for longer use phase and thereby avoiding waste. So those questions will certainly be also part of the proposal that we will come up with.
So can we expect also, since you mentioned eco-design, so legislative action for waste prevention?
That's too early for me to say whether it really will be legislative or whether we will try to see whether we can find different ways of doing this. This is one of the issues that we are debating internally for the moment.
Okay. And then the final question, just to complicate things further, life cycle analysis. How ideally, circular economy, we are talking about closing the circle, and therefore also, ideally, I guess, taking the entire life cycle of products into account. Maybe starting with you, Andy, this is, I guess, important to the aluminium sector too. It's a complex issue, but how can policymakers take this into account in a new package?
I'd agree with the statement. Life cycle is very important about what we do in the aluminium industry. I mean, the assessments you need to make are related to maybe high energy impact of the material when it's first made or used. Reducing that with recycling is one way of reducing that impact. But actually, the benefit that aluminium has in the use phase, which is the story in aluminium for long life products such as automobiles, so reducing the energy consumption in cars, the fuel consumption over a long lifetime, that's got to be somehow balanced. So I think you need to look at longer term targets that actually don't just focus on any one point in picking a weight-based target, for example. It's not necessarily the most effective way to say, well, let's just recycle it. We should be looking at whether that could have a longer life. Mm-hmm. So I don't know I have the specific answer how you actually integrate life cycle, I mean, it's a complex area. Some products extend the food life, you know, and that's hugely more important than actually any packaging issue, to be perfectly honest, for most products, because of the energy that goes into the product. So it's a complex area. No answer, I'm afraid.
Who wants to go first?
Well, yes. I think it's a wonderful thing, life cycle analysis. It gives us data on ecological footprint, etc., etc. I think what we should avoid as legislators is that we make legislation so inflexible that, let's say, even better solutions with using more materials are not possible anymore because of the European legislation that we're drafting. So I think that we need more flexibility in legislation in order to give businesses the opportunity to come up with a better life cycle analysis product. But then I think the proof lies at the companies themselves, that they have to prove that they're based on their own life cycle analysis, that it's better to do it with slightly more material than with less.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that life cycle analysis is really still in its childhood for the moment. We see in the market an incredibly number of different systems claiming, pretending to be measuring the effects. What we have started is a product ecological footprint system where we have tried to set up a methodology how to measure the footprint of individual products, and we're working for the moment in a pilot phase with industry, testing whether our methodology is manageable, is producing solid outcomes. And I think within the next 2-3 years we should have enough experience from there to see whether this is a methodology that we can really offer the markets, the producers, the consumers, to get the information, but to get solid, uniform information on what are the ecological implications of products. And we're, by the way, also doing it for organizations. So we're not just doing the ecological footprint of products, but also of companies, of production sites, etc. Then there would be an objective basis, and which would lead to comparability of the different systems.
Yeah.
But we're in a pilot test phase for the moment.
Yeah. So work in progress, much like the circular economy package
Absolutely.
itself. I think we're going to have to leave it there and let our viewers get some lunch. So we look forward to, before the summer, public consultation on the circular economy package. Thank you very much to all three of you, Carl, Gerben, Jan and Andy, for taking part. And thank you to all of you for your questions. I hope you had many of them answered. Thanks for sending them in. And thank you for watching this live debate from the European Parliament with viEUws. Thanks very much.